Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard, or more specifically, episode number 2 in the Let's Talk Cardboard video segment. My name is Cory, and I'm really excited to get started here because we got a ton of comments from some of the viewers. So I'm very excited to address some of these comments here live here for episode 2, and this is really what it's all about, is getting the community involved, getting questions and comments answered, and go through what is most important to you all, the viewers. And we got, like I said, some questions and comments here to go through from the first video segment, and these are in no particular order. I'll do my very best at addressing any questions or most of the comments that we get in the comment section below in each of the episodes, and pull out a few that I want to get answered here for the next episode in the segment, and just kind of go from there each week. So let's get started here with the first comment, or the first question I got from viewer named Amish1, and the question is, what are my thoughts on the recent Scrabble changes or the new additions to Scrabble, more specifically Scrabble Together and Scrabble Monopoly? So I did take a look at both of these. Scrabble Together is a cooperative version of Scrabble, and Scrabble Monopoly, as it sounds, is a version of Monopoly that uses Scrabble to pretty much gain the various properties on the Monopoly board itself. And what do I think of the recent Scrabble changes? I love this idea. I think it gives Scrabble some new life. Scrabble, it is an older game that really has never appealed to me. And when I think of Scrabble, I think of the die-hard Scrabble players. That's the first thing that comes to mind, is just a couple old people sitting around a table trying to think of the most complicated words they can to kind of piece them together. And to me, it just screams more of that gatekeeper type of mentality of a game where it's just very hard for new players or new Scrabble players to be good at it compared to Scrabble players that have been playing for years and years. So I really think specifically a cooperative version of Scrabble sounds very interesting for this reason. I think it can play easier and appeal to a wider audience of gamers, and more specifically kids as well. I have a couple daughters myself that are younger, 5 and 2, and as they get older, I can't imagine myself playing Scrabble against them. But as they get a little bit older here, I could definitely see myself picking up Scrabble Together and just playing cooperatively with my daughters on teaching them, using it as a learning tool, teaching them different words and playing together and having fun together and trying to complete the game cooperatively rather than just going head to head with somebody who's memorized a dictionary and all the words in the dictionary. So I think that's a very interesting thing. And also, Scrabble Monopoly, I'm not a huge fan of Monopoly. I'm not a huge fan of Scrabble, but honestly, the two combined kind of intrigue me a little bit more too. I would definitely give that game a try or two and see how I like it. But the last point I have here is I pretty much view Scrabble as more of a mechanism than a game itself. So it's fun to see Scrabble being used as a mechanism rather than an entire game premise. So what I mean by that is, in Scrabble, what is really at the heart of Scrabble? It's really just a bunch of word tiles and using those as tile placement. So to me, Scrabble is just one big tile placement mechanism with letters on it. So I am really liking the idea of using Scrabble as more of a mechanism than just a game surrounded in that mechanism itself. So I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but for me, in my head, I see more of that just like the tile placement part of it, and trying to map out the different tiles on the main board. I think that is kind of the more fun in it for me than trying to think of these crazy words to make. So I really like the use of Scrabble as a mechanism in various other things like a cooperative game or Monopoly. And I really would like to see this be more of a mechanism, or like the word building tile placement mechanism in other games as well. So that pretty much answers that question there. So moving on to the next question we got is from Donna Kieferless 1649. And she says she would like to see more top 5 or top 10 lists of different genres or different mechanisms, rather than just kind of like, hey, what's your top 10 favorite games of all time, or that sort of thing, more of that broad type of list. She would like to see more of a specific list to different game genres or mechanisms. So I'm going to give a quick top 5 list right off the bat here in episode number 2, coming at you live. Actually, I'm going to do 5 honorable mentions as well. So it's really a top 10, but I'm not going to really talk about the bottom 5 too much, but all 10 of these games are fantastic. So my top 5 list for today's mechanisms or genres is my top 5 worker placement games. So let's just start off simple. My honorable mentions here, I've got Feast for Odin, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, Kalis, Lords of Waterdeep, and Stone Age. So definitely check those games out. If you haven't heard any of those games, definitely give them a look. They are worth playing, worth checking out, and are fantastic games. Again, that's A Feast for Odin, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, Kalis, Lords of Waterdeep, and Stone Age. You will not be disappointed with any one of those titles. But now quickly here to my top 5 favorite worker placement games. Starting with number 5 is Viticulture. In Viticulture, you're running your own vineyard and having guests come and try different wines. You're trying to fulfill these different wine contracts. You are planting vines in the fields to grow grapes, and then gather the grapes, crush them on the crush pads, make wine out of them, different like blush or red wines or white wines or sparkling wines out of those grapes, and then store them in the cellar, and then using the wine in the cellars to fulfill, like I said, contracts, and trying to gain residual income from that, trying to gain victory points from that. And it's basically just running your own vineyard, making your own wine. It's very thematic, has a bunch of different things going on, but at the heart of it is the worker placement. You're literally sending a worker to a location to either, plant the grapes or gather grapes or do one of those main actions to really create that experience of running your own vineyard through that simple worker placement action. So a lot of fun there. And also a really cool thing with Viticulture as well is there is one worker called the Grande worker, and it's bigger than the rest of the workers. And normally in worker placement games, when you go to a location on the main board to take an action, that action spot is blocked for the remainder of that round, so nobody else can go there. But what I really like, at least in Viticulture Essential Edition, the newest edition of Viticulture, I really like the Grande worker that can go to any location regardless of if it's blocked or not. So it really allows you to get that one action you absolutely needed, using your Grande worker for that, and then really trying to vie for control over different worker placement spots with your other workers. So really, really like Viticulture. Okay, my number 4 is Raiders of the North Sea. Raiders of the North Sea, it's a Viking-themed game where you are going out and pillaging land and trying to raid villages and get resources and hire new Viking crew to your Viking ship to send them off to do these actions. And it's really cool, very thematic. What I really like about Raiders of the North Sea as far as the worker placement mechanism goes, it's very unique to any other worker placement game out there on the market, where literally the action behind it is you are sending a worker to a location to do an action, and then on your turn, you're doing a second action by pulling off a different worker off the map and doing that action for the worker you took off the map as well. So it's really kind of fun to see what your opponents are doing, which ones they're pulling and putting on the map and pulling off the map, and which ones are left over for you to then utilize. Because like I said, any of the empty available worker placement spots, you can place a worker on to take that action, but then your second action has to be pulling off a different worker than the one you placed to then take that other action. So that's really unique, really cool. I haven't seen it done in any other games, so I find that one to be very interesting and satisfying. My number 3 game on the list here is Beyond the Sun. It's a space-themed game, but it's pretty much Tech Tree, the board game. But it's really cool. It looks very bland, but what I really like about Beyond the Sun is that you are literally creating your own worker placement spots to go to in the present and in the future, and whatever tech tree or whatever section of the board you decide to go up on, that could be unique to only you and none of your opponents. So as you're working your way up and building up the tech tree, whatever route you're taking, you are then choosing the new worker placement spot for you to be able to go to. Because you are headed down that path, you can unlock these different worker placement spots. If you decide to go up on the technology track that another player is going up on and they're revealing new worker placement spots, you can then use those worker placement spots to your advantage as well. And you're basically just trying to hire crew and spaceships and colonize these planets. And there's some combat and attacking and area control out on the main space board. But then on the other tech tree board, it's really unique because, like I said, you are creating worker placement spots as you go, and literally some of the worker placement spots that are available to you are only available to you and nobody else, and vice versa. So it's really cool to decide and kind of pick and choose which path you would like to try to win the game with, and maybe which other paths you're trying to go up along with your opponents, so then you can use the same actions that are available to them. So that is Beyond the Sun. My number 2 game here on the list is The Great Wall. The Great Wall is another really cool game where it's kind of semi-cooperative, but mainly competitive. Really like it. You're trying to get the most points to win. You are defending the Great Wall of China. You are sending these units out to different worker placement spots to hire cavalry and archers and different units to defend the wall. Also in the Great Wall, it's got another unique worker placement mechanism that you don't see in any other game, which is there are multiple spots at each worker placement location, and the worker placement location doesn't trigger, and you're not able to do that action until all the spots on that worker placement location are completely filled up. And you have multiple workers, so some locations you might be able to fill up all the location or all the spots at that location yourself to make sure that it triggers that turn so you can do exactly what you need to do with that action. But some locations have a ton of spots at them that you might not be able to fill up until later rounds, or you're hoping that your opponents are going to fill it up on their turn, so then that action triggers for you as well. So it's really cool the way that works, and like I said, it's got a very kind of semi-cooperative feel where you are all trying to defend the Great Wall of China, but whoever can do it better is going to get more points ultimately for the victory. So the Great Wall, definitely a gorgeous, a beautiful production. Awesome miniatures. If you have the miniatures version of the game like I do, the board presence just looks amazing, but also it's got a very unique, very cool worker placement core mechanism to back this game as well. So, and now finally up to my number 1 favorite worker placement game as of right now, and that is Kanban EV. Kanban EV is the newest version of Kanban in the Viticulture line of games. Viticulture is a very heavy Eurogame designer. Kanban is definitely on the lighter end of all of his designs, so I really appreciate for that how simple and streamlined this game really is, but also the depth of strategy in this game. In Kanban EV, you are essentially a worker in a warehouse full of car parts, testing track, and you're basically building these cars, fitting them with the parts, testing them on the test tracks, creating these different vehicle designs and testing these designs. And the better you can do that, the more points you get for that. And you're trying to train to get better in different departments, and you're really competing over you and all of your opponents to do that better than anyone else. And also, there is a boss walking around the map, and her name is Sandra, and she's checking to make sure that you are taking your training seriously in each of these departments, because if you are lacking behind in some of your training, then she will actually award you negative points for not keeping up with what you're supposed to be doing, or essentially the requirements that your job is requiring you to do. So that is really cool. Also, at the end of each round, there is like a boardroom action where you are bidding over these different cards that are these goal cards, and if you've completed certain goals, you get victory points for that as well. But it's really cool because it feels like you are a worker in an automobile factory, really making all these different departments run smoothly, and try to do that the best you can for points. And it sounds like going to work the board game, but it really isn't. It's a lot of fun, very, very crunchy and strategic, very thinky, and just one that I love every time it hits the table. So that is Kanban EV. All right, and we're kind of running out of time for today's episode, so I'm going to save a couple of these other comments for the next episode, in episode 3, but I'll tell you what the comments are here so you can get to thinking about it and commenting on these questions before the next episode to see what you all think of these as well. I do have my answers to these questions already typed up, so I won't be cheating off of any of your comments or any of your answers to what you think should be the answer to these questions, just so you're aware of that. But yes, next episode, episode 3, we will be getting into Glenn Nystad 8484, his question, which is, why Brass Birmingham over Lancashire? So I'm going to go into detail in episode 3 on why I like Brass Birmingham better than Brass Lancashire. And they are similar games, but there are a few things that I appreciate a little more and find a little bit more fun and enjoyable in Brass Birmingham than I do in Lancashire. So stay tuned in episode 3 for my response to that question, why Brass Birmingham over Brass Lancashire. And then also I'm going to save this question for the next episode as well. And this is from Power to the Meeple 1410, Power to the Meeple 1410, however you want to say it. And the question here is actually a very interesting question that I haven't put much thought into, but I do have a long response to it here on the sheet. And it is, do you think the golden age of creating new board game mechanisms has passed? Are we beyond that? Are designers thinking of and creating of and coming up with new game mechanisms, or is it just them adapting what has already been created? So that is a very interesting question, and I've got a few in-depth bullet points to cover and go over with my opinion on that. So definitely stay tuned for next episode to hear my thoughts on that as well. And like always, in the comment section below, go ahead and leave more questions and comments that you want me to respond to in the comment section of this video that I will save for either episode 3 or episode 4, and we'll just kind of keep the ball rolling as we go with responding to these questions. And again, thank you for all of those who have been submitting comments and questions to this video segment. It really is a lot of fun to see these questions that you have all come up with, and it really is building a sense of community here for pretty much the first time here on Talking Cardboard, other than when we host our own room at Con of the North in the Minneapolis, Minnesota location. We do have definitely a big sense of community when we do that each and every year, but also building our YouTube community is very important to us, and one that I'm really, really excited for. So to keep that ball rolling, like I said, leave comments below, and until next time, you all have fun gaming and have a great day.